Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Jamie Proctor Boyce, and I am the head of growth here at Pocketed, where we're on a mission to help more businesses unlock grants, tax incentives, and other subsidies that are available to help you grow your business. So we'll get started momentarily. I'll just let my colleagues say hello.
Just on mute there. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica. I'm the customer success specialist here at Pocketed. If you have any questions, you can always pop them in the chat and I'll be able to help out. Or actually, we also have the Q&A function set up. So yeah, welcome. And we look forward to getting started with everyone.
So just a tiny bit of housekeeping. Monica sort of broke the ice there. I will share my screen momentarily. The focus of this session is market expansion funding. So we've titled the webinar Go Global. And it's all about finding the funding to bring your goods or services into new markets. And so we will get started there momentarily. But again, just a bit of housekeeping. We welcome questions and we'll have ample time for questions at the end of the session. If you can use the Q&A function, so if you hover over the bottom of Zoom, there's a toolbar that'll pop up. The icon right in the middle, two little speech bubbles, it says Q&A. If you can post the questions there, it's really helpful for Monica and I to keep track of those. And we will answer those Qs in short order. So I'll probably do my presentation. Feel free throughout to dump your questions in the Q&A function. Monica can monitor that. And if there's anything that's urgent, she'll interrupt me and we'll address your question. But otherwise, we'll go straight through. And then we will have about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Our aim is to do about a 45-minute session today. And I will get started momentarily. All right. So hopefully everyone can see my screen now. Okay, great. So again, I'm Jamie. I have the great privilege of leading our grant specialists and customer support folks. So if anyone's ever written into our shared inbox, you've likely gotten an email back from Monica. She handles a lot of inbound inquiries and has become quite knowledgeable about grants in the meantime. So that email there on your screen right now, hello@hellopocketed.io, that is the best place to reach us. If you don't know which Pocketed support you need, if we said something in this webinar that you wanted clarification on, if you're looking for grant strategy or grant writing support, that's the best place to reach us, hello@hellopocketed.io. We do have a special little perk for folks that we will be sharing at the end of the session. So hopefully you can stick around to the end because we do have some cool giveaways and discounts. So many of you, we believe, have come to this webinar because you're interested in funding to bring your business into new markets. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. So hopefully you will leave this session with some understanding of what are the market expansion opportunities out there when it comes to grant funding and how you can leverage them. We're also just going to have a great, hopefully very helpful chat about how to assess your business's grant readiness, make sure that you're ready to pursue these opportunities. And we'll give you some tips and tricks about getting started with grants or how to become even more successful with grants if you're already pursuing funding for your business. So when we talk about grants, it's really helpful just to make sure we're all on the same page about why do we even care about these government programs. We hear all the time that there's free money out there. And that's true. But it's not the only source of capital that folks use to grow their businesses. So obviously people bootstrap their businesses, they put in their own money, they get a line of credit or a loan from the bank, they take on equity investment through the support of investors, whether those are angel investors, friends and family, or venture capital firms. There's also crowdfunding sourcing of funding, sourcing of funding. You guys know what I mean. You can reach out using crowdsourcing platforms to have the public make contributions to your project. That's another common thing that we're seeing more and more of. And then obviously there's grant money. So typically we see people when they're starting a business using various sources of capital. Why are we so passionate about the grants piece of this at Pocketed? Well, they're pretty powerful. Grants help you retain more ownership of your business. We call them non-dilutive, and that means that they don't dilute your stake in your business. You can take on a grant and you don't have to give away ownership shares or a stake in order to get that money. So grants help you keep more control and ownership of what you're working so hard to build. They're also typically not debt. So while there are some government debt programs, most of the programs we're talking about today are grant contributions, and that means you do not have to repay them. So that's money that you can get. It's an infusion of money that you can get into your business, and that you don't have to return, unlike something that you put on a credit card or a line of credit or a loan that you get from a bank. There's also some of these programs that you're entitled to. You can leverage them, access them through your tax return, as long as you are, making sure that you submit on time and make and are doing appropriate activities. So grants sometimes are competitive and sometimes they're entitlements. And so with the market expansion programs that we are going to talk about today, it's an interesting one. They've always been, none of them have ever been technically been entitlements, but I would say that they are becoming more and more competitive, which means you're not guaranteed. Even if you are taking your product into a new market, attending a trade show, going on an international business trip, you're not necessarily entitled to these funds. So the programs are competitive, and we do see folks leveraging the support of expert grant writers to make sure that their submission is as powerful as possible. So we'll come back to that, but do know the programs that we're talking about today are competitive programs. All right, so again, a big reason that we care about grants is because there's a lot of money every year given back to Canadian small businesses through incentives, tax incentives, and grant programs, almost $6 billion, in fact. And there is money out there for almost every type of business. That's another exciting thing about the market expansion programs that we're going to talk about momentarily. They are largely industry agnostic. So you can be a brick and mortar store. You can be selling products online or in person. You can be a technology company, clean tech, ag tech, or you can be in the agriculture space. You can be selling professional services. Regardless of what type of business you're in, we do know there is money out there for every type of business if you are conducting grant fundable activities, which we'll get to in just a second. So this money is not necessarily industry specific. Today, we're going to go over, again, some industry agnostic market expansion opportunities, as well as highlight a couple of industry specific opportunities. So the money out there largely falls into a couple of key categories. Money that will help you do the following things: grow your team, purchase equipment, train your team, expand into new markets, implement environmental or sustainability goals into your business. These are all different types of business activities that the government is interested in funding. Well, why? Because these are all categories that help push forward the government's economic development mandates. So for you, you might want to get new equipment. Why is the government interested in giving you a tax credit for that? Well, they want to make sure that your business is as modernized as possible. They are happy to give you up to $10,000 every year in most provinces to upskill your current employees in the form of training grants. Why? Because we want to make sure that the Canadian workforce is as competitive as possible. So if you're willing to create a job, the economic development mandate that the government is passionate about, there is money out there in the form of hiring subsidies. So we'll come back to this a little bit later in the presentation, but it's super important to be thinking about where is the intersection of what you want to do in your business and what the government cares about. That intersection is where the grant money lies. So today, we're going to focus on expanding into Canadian bringing Canadian goods and services into new markets. So today, there are 1,550 programs open in Canada. I checked at 7 a.m. here in Nova Scotia, where I'm based. That number fluctuates by a couple hundred depending on the day. That's a lot of programs to navigate. And obviously, those are across multiple categories and not necessarily all relevant to your business. So we hear every day from clients, we know that there's money out there for my business. Like, I am confident that I am doing things that the government would like to invest in. But there's so many opportunities that it gets pretty complex pretty quickly. And so we believe very strongly here at Pocketed that you need a funding strategy. And kudos to each of you in the room today. You are taking the first, if not maybe the second, third, or fourth step in your own funding strategy by looking into these market expansion opportunities. So I promise those specific program details are coming really soon. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that the whole reason we need a webinar about these programs is that there's a lot of complexity. There's timing complexity. There is the difference between being eligible for a grant and being able to actually ascertain if it's relevant to your business objectives. There's also unspoken criteria, right? You might be told that a program that you qualify for a program. You might think on paper that you're a perfect fit, but you maybe are not super familiar with that funder and what they really care about. That's where Pocketed can come in and support. There's tons of insights about every single program in the Canadian ecosystem in our self-serve software tool. We have a whole team of grant specialists that can help you understand your own grant readiness and those unspoken criteria that the funders really care about. And we have grant writers that can help you prepare applications that really speak to those priorities and help you win more money. So again, we can come back to that. So of those, this is just a short visual, of those 1,550 programs, your business on average is likely eligible for 173. So if you wanted to do every little thing that the government was willing to invest money in, you could likely apply to 173 of those programs. But if, like many of you in the audience, are here because you are interested in international market expansion, of that 173 that you're eligible for, 2 are probably relevant to your market expansion activities at this moment in time. So getting from those, oh, it looks like the last time we did this presentation, it was 529. I guess today with 1,550, there's a good amount of grants open. But it's definitely work to winnow down all of the opportunities, which are open, which are you're eligible for, and which are actually relevant to your business goals. So let's jump in to some of these specific programs and see, hopefully, which you are eligible for, which are relevant to your business, and what your next steps are if you're looking for support in applying. So CanExport SMEs is absolutely the inspiration for this webinar. Excuse me one sec. So we see this annual program reopen every year. And the reason that we are excited to chat with folks today is that we believe this program will reopen any minute. This is a big tent program. There's room for almost everybody in this program because it is industry agnostic. There's only a very, very short list of folks that they don't fund. And the key criteria here is that you do have to have $100,000 of declared revenue to the CRA. So you need to have been in business for at least a full year and have declared at least a full year's income to the CRA. And that revenue, that top line revenue, not your profit, that's your business, but the gross amount that you brought in needs to be at least 100,000. It cannot be 99,999. It needs to be $100,000 or more. Further, once your business is thriving and you have $100 million in revenue, you're no longer eligible for this project. Program rather. So what is the funding? It's per application, you can request $50,000 in funding. That's 50% of a $100,000 project. And the maximum, so the minimum amount that you can request is $10,000 in funding. So because CanExport reimburses 50% of your project costs, so you're going to put forth a market expansion project. We'll get into momentarily what that project can include. But the minimum ask can be for a $20,000 project for which you would get $10,000 in funding. Maximum per application is a $100,000 project for which you would get $50K in funding. Insider tip, for first-time applicants, we typically see awards of between $25,000 to $35,000. It's pretty rare in our experience to get the full $50,000 when you're a first-time applicant. That being said, you got to start, and we absolutely want to see you requesting the full 50. So when they take out certain expenses, when they only choose to approve a certain amount, they're excising pieces, they're excising project costs from a $50,000 award, right? It's better to go in with the full ask than have them, the funder, claw that back in most cases. So technically, you can each company can request up to $100,000 in funding every year. So obviously, if the max per application is $50K in funding, you would need to put in multiple applications. We do see this program filling up relatively quickly. So it's somewhat difficult to get multiple applications in a single year, but not unheard of. Further, if you are here representing a group of companies, a parent company that has multiple subsidiaries, that group of companies can actually request up to $200,000 through multiple applications in a single year. So again, this program is an annual intake. We do believe it will open this month, and it is to request support for the following activities that I'll just get there in just a second. These activities can take place between April 1st, 2024 and March 31st, 2025. So the federal fiscal. And that's an important thing to clock. We do see many, many grants follow the federal fiscal. So that new year is actually April 1st. Lots of grant programs fund in those windows. So again, to be eligible for CanExport SMEs, at bare minimum, you need to have that CRA number, be in business for at least a year, have at least $100,000 in declared revenue. You need to be either incorporated, an LLP, or a cooperative with presence in Canada. And you need to have fewer than 500 employees. We can definitely grant write this. We're helping dozens and dozens of clients on their applications already so that they can get in as soon as the portal opens, and we would love to support you as well. So what kind of things can you fund with CanExport? It's traditionally a travel and trade show grant. This is literally a grant to get out of Canada, to go to events, to hawk your wares, whether those are actual product, a physical product, or if they are also technical services or other types of services. It can be goods or services. So travel is covered, trade shows, conferences, and a range of consulting that you might need to get set up to sell in that new market. So every application to CanExport can have up to 5 target markets. The US is technically 4 markets. They split it into quadrants. So say you were going to do a market expansion project where you were going to attend some trade shows in the US and Mexico. So you would want your flights covered, your hotels, a per diem for your food. You might also need to make sure that you were set up legally to sell in those countries. You might need some tax advice, some legal advice, IP protection in these new territories. You might need to get some of your promotional materials translated into Spanish since you're going to start selling in the Mexican market. All of these things, as well as consulting for market analysis and business development, can be covered by CanExport. This is kind of a weighty slide, let's be honest, but I'll also be honest, this is about 10% of what the grant doesn't cover. And so this is really a point of where we have some pretty amazing market expansion experts that work for us as grant writers. They boast success rates with CanExport SMEs, 95%, 97%. And they are very familiar with who cannot leverage CanExport, or the types of things you should not request funding for because it will get denied. So this is a list. I will point out a couple things, but it is just a small list. And important to note that there is a lot of nuance to these programs. And it's always great if you're a first-time applicant, particularly, to work with a professional. So at a high level, I did mention that the program is industry agnostic. The only people, cannabis and recreational substance projects are not eligible for the program, nor are third-party representatives. So this would include consultants, distributors. So if you distribute a product and you just are looking to sell it into a new market, but you don't do any amendment to that product to make it your own, you would be considered just a distributor. And while it's in a super important business, it's not eligible for CanExport. Similarly, if you are just providing consulting services, i.e. if you're just a lawyer, you would not be eligible for CanExport. That being said, we work with a range of firms that do offer consulting services, but because they also maybe have an online platform or an ebook or a digital course. They have a proprietary product that is connected to their consulting services. We've seen a lot of success with those types of applicants. So the main thing to note is that CanExport is to get out of Canada. It doesn't cover opportunities like travel or events within Canada. It doesn't cover your staff salaries. So I do see somebody asking in the chat, can we hire temporary staff? You definitely can hire temporary staff, but their wages are not going to be covered by CanExport. We might be able to help you get a hiring grant for that hire, but instead their airline ticket, their hotel room, their per diem while they're in that foreign territory working, those things would be covered. You can definitely translate and get produced marketing materials for a trade show, but swag, a pen, a deck of cards, a beer cozy, those things with your logo on them are not covered by CanEx. You also need to be attending other people's events. So if you're putting on a private event in that target market, costs are not usually covered in that area. So this is definitely getting into the details. I will move on. But definitely a big part of this is travel and trade shows, whether you are, to the question in the chat, an exhibitor or an attendee. Both of those are great opportunities to recoup some of your money with CanExport. You can pay to go to a conference just as an attendee, or you can pay for a booth, and those costs would be covered. This is definitely the level of nuance that you'll be working on with your grant writer when you engage their services. Their goal is to make sure that you are milking as big of an ask as possible with your project, via your application. So they will go through with you in detail, based on your specific objectives, what types of activities you should be putting into an application. Okay, so I'll pause there. Because I am going to move on to some other programs. So I will pause there just in case there are any questions specifically about CanExport. And just to the question, we are recording this and we will send out the recording. Okay, so CanExport SMEs is but one stream of this Trade Commission funding. CanExport Innovation is another opportunity. And this one is not yet open. Technically, again, CanExport SMEs is not open, but we do believe that this one is going to be reopening later this year. And so this is a little bit different in terms of its eligibility. It's also slightly a bigger grant. 75% of project costs. This is not necessarily to do business development internationally. CanExport Innovation is to help you pursue and execute international research and development partnerships. So if you are building innovation, any type of innovation, and working on that project with an international partner, not a client, but someone who's going to co-develop your work, those costs can be covered. Costs to travel to meet with those people, costs for developing the legal strategy to collaborate with that person. Sorry, guys. And so the project costs that can get subsidized are 75%, up to $75,000. And this can also, it covers a range of things, shipping your prototype between the two locations. So the key eligibility here, you don't have to meet a revenue threshold. You don't have to have been in business for a certain amount of time, but you do need to be building proprietary tech that has a technology readiness level of 4 or higher. So you have that MVP. If you don't know what this means, that's totally fine. You likely are not developing technology that is relevant to CanExport Innovation. But again, super happy to chat if you have questions about this program. hello@hellopocketed.io is the best place to reach us, or you're welcome to flip a question into the Q&A here. So with this program, again, it is currently closed. They have not let us know when it will reopen. I believe sometime after April. And the one thing to note, though, with this CanExport SMEs, the first program to travel and go to trade shows, and CanExport Innovation, you can pursue both programs simultaneously. So it's not an either or, it can be a both for certain companies. All right. So now we're going to move into just a handful of provincial opportunities. So lots of funding available to folks in Quebec. And they have an annual program, which I'm not going to bother butchering the French title of that program, but internally we just call it PSCE. And it is essentially a marketing and support program that is somewhat similar to CanExport, but there's some key differences we'll share in a moment. The main thing is that there are 3 different streams that are based on revenue. And so the more money you have made and declared, the more funding you can request. And it really is open to folks in Quebec, regardless of industry. The key way that this program is different than CanExport, and again, you can pursue provincial funding at the same time as that you pursue federal funding. I'm going to start that again. You can pursue provincial funding at the same time as federal funding. And so please note that, again, this is not an either or. PSCE also covers wages, so hiring salespeople within Canada. Their salaries can get covered through this grant. There's a wider range of the types of marketing it will cover. So with CanExport, you can get marketing covered, CanExport SMEs. But this is largely just digital ads or SEO in your new target market. With PSCE, there's more opportunity. You can also use this money to expand beyond your current territory in Quebec, so into other provinces. So expansion within Canada is also covered. There are a couple of types of businesses that are not eligible. But again, if you're in Quebec and you're interested in support, we do have fully bilingual staff, myself excluded, sadly. But we do have French-speaking grant specialists and grant writers who are super happy to dig into this program with you and support you if it's a fit for your business. Another opportunity that's available to folks in Ontario who are working in farming or food is the Grow Ontario Market Initiative. So this is another provincial opportunity. It's 50% of funding up to 60 grand if you are a primary producer, so if you're an agricultural producer, or you're a processor, if you're taking raw agricultural materials and turning them into new things. That could be a food product, that could be a dietary supplement. We are actually supporting quite a few of these right now. We can do grant writing for these on success or a hybrid fee. I can come back to that if folks are interested. But the key criteria here is you do need to be a producer or processor based in Ontario. You have to have a CRA number. You do need to have a valid this is the ID number for where you are doing the processing, or a valid farm registration number. So if you don't know what those things are, that's okay, but maybe you're not a producer or a processor. But definitely take a peek at the Grow Ontario Market Initiative, sometimes called GOMI for short. And the other thing that I think is kind of helpful to note on this slide is that they do ask you to prove that you're in full compliance of any environmental, labor, or tax rules. Let's be straightforward. When you're taking money from the government, you're going to need to be up to date with the CRA on your taxes. You're going to need to have workers' comp in place if you have employees, et cetera, et cetera. While this is free money, we do need to be fully compliant when we're working with these partners, not just for the health and safety of everyone around us, but also because when you're taking on the partner of the government, even though they're not asking for an equity stake in your business, they do want to make sure that they're making investments in compliant, safe businesses. All right, so here's a quick overview of some other types of provincial market expansion programs. So in Alberta, just like in Quebec, they have an annual program that's called the Export Expansion Program. It did close in late 2023 for this year, but we do expect it to reopen again when the federal fiscal or the government fiscal flips April 1st. This is again 50% funding, I think up to 25K usually, both to bring Albertan goods and services into new markets and to attract foreign buyers into Alberta. Creative Export Canada, that's a federal program that supports the export of artistic and cultural goods and projects. So dance companies, book publishers, fashion designers all leverage Creative Export Canada funding to expand their reach. We've been really waiting on this one for a while. They said in November that it would open sometime this winter. So that's one that we're all keeping an eye on for the 2024-25 funding. Invest Nova Scotia has a range of export programs, specifically the export development program. I think it's about 15K that can be used for export activities, market analysis. We do expect that to reopen later this winter or early spring. Creative BC has a market expansion fund for book publishers. We do expect that to be open maybe mid-2024. The Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership is $3.5 billion investment by the feds in a range of agricultural focused programs. They have done a transfer to most of the provinces, and each of the provinces have different export programs for ag. Unfortunately, I do know it's closed in BC and Manitoba, but I believe it's still open in Saskatchewan. This is a great way to use what soon will be your free pocketed account. If you don't already have one, that code is coming momentarily. But that's a great way to use our self-serve software to check out the grant matches on your list and see what is currently open to you. Beyond funding programs, I did want to highlight two government agencies, Export Development Canada and the Trade Commission. These are both great supports, albeit not just for funding. So Export Development Canada, they don't give any grants, but they do, for more established businesses, have a range of credit solutions. They also have a range of international insurance products that they offer. So they help you with the risk of expanding internationally through a range of different products. They also have insights, connections. They're a great agency. They are typically working with companies that are relatively established, but maybe that's a bit of a through line through all of these programs, right? Usually these grant programs or these government supports want to see some traction in Canada before they're interested in making an investment in your project to take it abroad. The Trade Commission is the federal agency that disseminates CanExport SMEs and CanExport innovation funding, but that's not all they do. They also do a ton of trade missions, which can be really powerful ways to get the word out in new markets about your business. So you could join an industry-specific trade mission, go as a group, do a ton of networking events in that new market. They offer a lot of events, lots of insights. There's over 160 trade commissioners internationally that their job is really to help Canadian businesses figure out how to navigate all of the different opportunities when they're trying to sell internationally. So those are great. Sorry for my typo here, folks, but other than that, everything on this list is very good. And we want to keep our eyes open for the opportunities there. Okay, I'll pause and just check the Q&A because I want to move on to understanding if and when you're ready for these grants. But before we leave the program-specific questions, I want to look at the program-specific questions before we move on from the programs. Sylvia Wang asks, is there a possibility that CanExport Innovation will not open this year? Yeah, there's always that possibility. So we do know with some level of assurance that CanExport SMEs will open this year. They have said they plan to reopen in February, so this month, whereas CanExport Innovation still has the same message that they posted last June, which is that they are now taking an administrative pause and that we should stay tuned to know when they'll reopen. So last year, both programs reopened in February. We don't have a firm expectation of when CanEx Innovation will reopen. There's always a chance that the government changes their priorities and doesn't reopen a program, but I think it would be a pretty big blow. This is just my personal opinion. I think the fact that that program page is still up, that program is a pretty big linchpin in the Canadian ecosystem. I would be surprised if it was going to be fully archived. One of the questions is, are any of these to export provinces into other products into other provinces? So hopefully I answered that. Typically, when we look federally, market expansion opportunities are to expand internationally, but province by province, we do see some support to get your goods into new provinces. This is particularly true, I would say, in Quebec. And I also see a lot of programs in the agriculture space or in the food space to expand interprovincially. Cindy's asking, does the sustainability fund support pet industry products? We need to dig in, Cindy, but typically if you think of your business as a processor, which I believe pet food would be, if you are taking raw agricultural materials and turning them into a new product, then yes, it doesn't necessarily have to be food for human consumption. And Joyce is asking about the eligibility for Creative Export Canada. I'd be more comfortable to dig into that once the program reopens. I don't remember actually off the top of my head if there are different, I think there are two streams, and I do think there's a difference in revenue requirement for each one. But really, I think the big thing to look at if you want to search Creative Export Canada is the industries, and they do list them thoroughly, which industries they're looking to cover. So interactive media, again, fashion, books, printed media, artistic, like live performance. So again, artistic and cultural exports are the focus of that program. All right. Did I miss any, Monica?
No, it looks like we've answered all as of now.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, folks. All right, so again, every day, folks are like, I think there's money out there. And we are working hard at Pocketed to try to distill, despite the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of businesses and thousands of programs, how to distill whether or not you're really ready for grants. So at a high level, you are a good fit to pursue grants if you're incorporated. So there are programs where you don't have to be incorporated. You can be a sole proprietor and still access those programs. Those are largely hiring grants. But definitely the lion's share of grants are going to open up to you once you become incorporated at bare minimum. The other one that's tricky that we do want to be straightforward about is access to capital. Almost every grant is issued as a reimbursement. They do not give you the money up front to just go out and spend. They want you to spend that money yourself and then get reimbursed by the grant. And so that's where, even though it's free money, we do need you to have access to capital to float the upfront costs that are required by grants, right? Again, CanExport SMEs, you can get 50K, but you have to put in 50K of your own money to get that. And then the government's contribution is issued as a reimbursement. So what I always say is that grants are not great at creating runway, right? They're not just going to be an infusion of cash, but they're excellent if you have a little bit of runway at extending that runway. So definitely there is a cost, if you will. Even if you can recoup the cost, there's a cost involved in grants. And so access to capital, that doesn't mean, you have to be a profitable company, but whether you have some sales revenue, you have another grant, you have a line of credit with your bank, having access to capital is pretty critical. The last sort of baseline eligibility question we ask is, do you have payroll employees? The reason there's an asterisk here is it's okay for many grants if you don't already have them, but you definitely need a willingness to hire folks on payroll. I've worked pretty deeply in hiring grants. In fact, I built 4 federally funded programs for a national charity. And I think in my 7 or 8 years of getting to know hiring grants pretty intimately, I've seen one that subsidized a contractor. So the government wants you to be creating jobs, right? They want you putting folks on payroll, paying into EI and CPP. So if you don't already have employees, you definitely need to have a willingness to hire on payroll in order to maximize your grant potential. You become even more eligible for grants when any of the following are true. Are you in a priority industry? So as you're probably grokking, there's money out there for clean tech. There's more money out there for ag. There's money for life sciences, manufacturing, logistics, technology. So if you are in a priority industry, that means that more industry-specific programs are going to be open to you. If you're investing in environmental or sustainability goal projects, so if you are making your business greener, there's money out there for that. And then in general, are you growing? Grants, again, want to fund your growth. They want you to be doing incremental, net new projects that are expanding your reach, expanding the size of your team, expanding your potential for revenue. So if you're hiring, if you're expanding into new markets, if you're digitizing legacy elements of your business, if you're conducting new research or building new innovation, that's really the sweet spot where we know because of those growth activities, there's going to be more grants that you are eligible for. So to put this into some questions that you can ask yourself, is your business incorporated? Are you generating revenue? If not, skipping down to number 5, do you have access to other capital that can fund grant costs? And then definitely looking at the revenue thresholds, as we saw with CanExport SMEs, you do need to have at least $100,000 in revenue. And there are many grants that you will no longer be eligible for once you hit 100 million. And are you or do you plan to have employees on payroll? The last big thing when you're looking at your grant strategy, and I sort of spoke to this in the beginning of the session, is what are you doing that dovetails with the greater good, with the economic development mandate that Canada cares about? For-profit funding is all about stimulating the economy. So really thinking about how does your project benefit Canada is a really critical thing to know when you're ready for grants and how to position a competitive grant application. So as you're thinking about building your funding strategy, it's important to plan ahead. You need to be thinking about what you want to do over the next 12 to 24 months. Again, CanExport will cover market expansion activities over a full year, but there's only one intake for this grant. And in the last couple of years, we have seen the funding become fully allocated in 3 or 4 months. So that means you need to be planning ahead. You need to understand the timelines of what you want to do and make sure those align with the various programs. And you always need to be thinking about what's the benefit to Canada. All right, so really quick, because I do want to leave some time if there are other questions. Couple of tips from us. Really understanding your eligibility is really important. And you know what? The reality is you might not be highly eligible yet, but planning ahead is critical. Knowing the opportunities out there when it comes to funding and how they could help speed up your growth, even if you're not ready to hire yet. Even if you haven't hit that $100,000 in revenue, at least you know, right? Now you know the minute you have that assessment from the CRA with $100,000 of revenue or higher, you can be thinking about CanExport and you can make sure that you're preparing an application to get in at the front of the queue. So are you incorporated? Do you have employees or are you planning to add them? Do you have access to capital? It's time for grants. Are you in a priority industry? Are you investing in fundable activities like hiring, like expanding, like research or innovation? Great, you're highly eligible for grants, and you should probably send an email to hello@hellopocketed.io. So keeping top of mind, what is that benefit to Canada is really critical. As I mentioned, grants take a while. Some of these larger programs can take over a year to secure. CanExport does promise that SME Stream does promise a 60-day return. Last year, they didn't meet that service standard. It took folks months to find out if their projects were approved. That's why we're really passionate about getting the word out about CanExport SMEs now so folks can apply before there's a backlog of applications. But the reality is that timelines matter. And the sooner you're thinking about this and planning and then being prepared to wait, is a good strategy. It's hard to get started, but you know what? You took the first step today. You're starting to learn. You're realizing that there's a grant partner out there in the form of Pocketed. We are here to answer questions, to provide the service support you might need, but definitely thinking about these things, being patient about both your business readiness and the various cycles of intakes is important, but getting started is really critical. And as I mentioned, you have a choice. You can use Pocketed self-serve tool. We're about to give everybody a free subscription if you don't already have one. And you can self-serve using a tool like Pocketed to figure out what grant opportunities are out there. But if you're busy, if you would rather be focusing on doing what you do best, which is whatever running your business means to you, those things that only you can do, maybe it's time to outsource some of this. We are here to provide grant strategy and grant writing support. If it's, again, if you're too busy, if it's the first time you've written a grant, if the program is like such a big opportunity that you think you want some expertise, that's what we're here for. So again, we offer 3 critical things here at Pocketed. We have our self-serve software tool. This is great for everyone and anyone who wants to keep an eye on their grant matches. Our intelligent matching platform will automatically help you winnow down those over 1,500 programs that are open today, show you the matches that are relevant to your business. And then we have filters so that you can dive into specific types of funding. You can set up alerts so you never miss an opening or closing. And there's lots of insights in the tool about the specific programs. If you're highly eligible, and again, you're ready for some fractional grant support, we offer something called Pocketed Concierge. It's essentially a consulting retainer, $1,600 for the full year. You get on-demand access to a grant specialist. We'll meet at least twice a year to plan grant strategy, but we're here to take your calls, and then we're proactively sending you new grant recommendations throughout the year. And then last is grant writing. If you find a program, or if through Pocketed Concierge we uncover a program for you, we would love to do the grant writing for you. Grant writing fees vary on the program. So CanExport SMEs, we can do that fully on success. It is a 20% success fee, or you can pay a hybrid fee, a small upfront fee and a 10% success fee. We'll also do fully upfront if that's your preference, but we always like to offer options. And really, we'd love to quote by program for you folks. So if you have a question about a specific program and what it would cost to write it, send us an email to hello@hellopocketed.io, and we can let you know what the quote and options for grant writing fees would be. So I'm going a little long. I'm maybe going to stop sharing my screen just for a minute in case there are questions. Otherwise, I would be super happy to share some case studies of the different folks that we're working with. But as Monica posted in the chat, we would love to give anyone who doesn't currently have a Pocketed account a free basic account. So if you click on that link to create your account and you use the code expansion 2024, we can hook you up with a free basic account. We'd also love to offer a 10% discount on anyone who's interested in market expansion funding grant writing. So again, if you want CanExport SME support, you want the success fee, instead of paying 20% on success, we can do it for 18% success with that discount code. So if you're ready for grant writing help, just send us an email, hello@hellopocketed.io. We'll probably just pick up the phone and give you a call, make sure that you're eligible for the program before we hook you up with one of our expert grant writers. All right, folks. I'm just scrolling through the questions. Go ahead, Monica, if you want to orient me.
Ben had a question specifically about CanExport. I believe these were already addressed, but it's always good to reiterate. So how long does it take to get the CanExport funds if approved? And the second question is, do you have to spend the 100K first and then get the 50K back?
Yeah, all super great questions. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, folks. So to be clear, CanExport will open for new applications this month, sometime in February is what we're told. And those applications can request funding for projects that start no earlier than April 1st, 2024, and can extend all the way to March 31st, 2025. So your question, Ben, about stuff that already happened, they're not going to reimburse you for anything retroactive. So unfortunately, those requests would have had to have been made for last year's CanExport intake. The nice thing about CanExport is that they do allow up to 4 claims per project. So whereas most grants, they want you to finish the full project before you request any reimbursement, you can actually submit your claims for CanEx up to 4 times. So maybe your project is Acme Inc.'s European expansion, and you're going to go to France, Germany, Spain, and the UK. Rest in peace, Europe. But still, it's your European expansion. Maybe you're doing each of those countries in different months. When you finish each leg of your journey, you could submit a claim report and get that money back. So CanExport SMEs is technically a trade commissioner program, but NRC IRAP, National Resource Council Industrial Research Assistance Program. But another federal funder actually administers the claims. They're great as long as you set up direct deposit with them. They typically will issue those reimbursements within 30 days. So hopefully that answers the question, but feel free to follow up if I missed anything.
Another one we have from Iraj is any specific program for SaaS companies?
Yeah, so I would say absolutely CanExport SMEs. It's industry agnostic. I would say we do see absolutely like lots of technology funding that's maybe outside the realm of this presentation, but money to build and or commercialize your technology. And then obviously when technology has a specific industry application, that's going to also, even if like you're building software, but it's for agriculture, that could unlock certain industry specific funding. So we love to chat with technology companies. We're always really happy if you're growing and you're spending money to help you recoup some of those costs with grants, just send us an email at hello@hellopocketed.io. Ideally, you have your Pocketed account set up so we can just see some basic information about your company, and then we can give you some advice about whether we think it makes sense to jump on a call and start sussing out your grant opportunities. Okay.
So we have another one from David, specifically around training courses. So if they are a training course on how restaurants can leverage AI in their business, can employers use training grants to cover their investments with them? Or does the training slide or pre-approved to be covered?
Thanks, David. Yeah, so David's asking about training grants, which we didn't talk much about, but they're awesome opportunities both for businesses to train current or future employees, and great opportunities for folks like David who are offering training to help get more customers, right? If they can get a $10,000 grant to cover the cost of engaging your training services, that's great. So the requirements on what is valid training for these programs vary slightly by province. So again, I welcome you to send an email to hello@hellopocketed.io, or to check out Pocketed and dig in using the filters on training programs. But typically, no, essentially, you don't need a specific certification. Technically, most eligible training needs to offer a certification, but that can be literally a certificate that you develop yourself. So these training grants are largely available in every province. They're actually federal money that's transferred to the provincial governments. Again, requirements and levels of funding vary a little bit province by province, but typically it's a max of $10,000 per employee per year. And that's a subsidy of between 60 and 100%, depending on a couple of different factors. And in many provinces, you can use up to 30 spots in that program. So in other words, you could get $10,000 in training covered for 30 employees, get up to $300,000 in money. So this is a great program. Goes by a bunch of different names. In BC, it's the BC Employer Training Program. In Alberta, it's the Canada-Alberta Job Grant, Canada-Ontario Job Grant. It's WIPC here in Nova Scotia, where I live. So again, this is a great opportunity to use Pocketed. When you create your profile and you say, I am a BC-based business, it's not going to show you WIPC because you're not in Nova Scotia. It's going to show you the BC Employer Training Grant. It's going to save you time. It's going to show you insights on that program. And again, give you some next steps about how to either connect with support if you need support with with understanding if that program is right for you, or how to apply on your own. I did want to just mention to Deborah's question in the chat, if anyone here is already a Pocketed subscriber, send us an email and we'll make sure that we can extend your subscription with the code. I think the code is just set up for new subscribers, but if anyone's a current subscriber, we're happy to get you a deal as well. All right, let me look in this Q&A. I think we probably have time for one more question. Araj is asking about the tourism growth program. I'm just making sure I got all of them. Yeah, so tourism growth is a grant or a loan, depending on what type of business you are. This is not for restaurants or retail, but it's for other tourism promoting organizations in BC. It's closing very soon. I think it's, maybe you know, Araj, I think it's the 29th of February. We are supporting these applications. If anybody needs help understanding if they're eligible or not, you can send us an email. It's up to $250,000. Tourism is really important to all of our provinces, especially all season tourism. So it's definitely a mandate of the government to empower tourism businesses to get the capital they need so that they can keep thriving and bringing new folks into our beautiful provinces and country. So with that, I think I will pause. I thank everyone for being here. This feels like we tried to do a lot in this. And I think if anything, I hope that you're just walking away knowing that Pocketed has a ton of expertise about grants, and we're really here to help you wherever you're at. if it's just using our software to figure out what your grant matches are, if you're looking for some strategic support and you want folks that can help you map out a funding roadmap, me or my team would be happy to help you with that. And if and when a program allows grant writing, needs a grant writer, we can offer those services as well. So please reach out, hello@hellopocketed.io. Send us an email. If you are interested in CanExport SMEs grant writing, time is of the essence. We would love to support you now before the portal opens so that we can submit at the front of the queue. And we're happy to give you a 10% discount on whatever fees you choose with that program. And similarly, if there's another program that you're interested in, send it to Monica. She's there in the inbox. And we will absolutely let you know grant writing fees. You don't have to do this alone. I know as a former entrepreneur, it's a big lift. Each and every one of you is working hard, really, really hard every day to build your business, to create meaningful employment for your employees, to make a difference in your communities. We salute you. We believe passionately in entrepreneurship here at Pocketed. But we do want you to know that when it comes to grants, you're not alone. So please come find us. And I wish you all a very, very happy Thursday. Take care, folks. Nice to see you all.